Welcome to Wrestling Chat with Friends, the Tuesday show. Thank you for the pleasure of your time wherever you're listening to us on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. You can catch all our live shows there. But we're here tonight. It's Tuesday. It's Wednesday. Sorry. We usually go on Tuesday, but a lot's been happening in the wrestling world the last few days. So tonight, we're going to cover the WWE side of things. I'm EJ the Collector. Thanks for joining us. And I'm joined, as always, as I am every week, by... hopefully by the end of the show, we'll have a nickname for him. But as of right now, he's insert clever nickname here. TG, how we doing?
Feel great. Feel good. Happy to be here.
Is your space for rent, or are you just wanting someone to come up with a clever nickname? Can we get MeUndies or Blue Chew in to sponsor your nickname going forward, or what?
I don't know what Blue Chew is, but I'm assuming it's some kind of enhancement product.
A popular podcast sponsor to a lot of
I'm always willing to accept money for services rendered.
Excellent.
But I had not intended this to be a space for rent. It was merely a byproduct of haste.
Gotcha.
That's it.
Gotcha. Well, we're glad you're here. And we're joined again, as we always are, by our resident professional wrestler, the Nightmare, the hottest free agent in wrestling, Kelsey. How we doing tonight?
Hello. Doing good. Feeling great.
Great to see all three of you. It has been a busy last 24 hours of wrestling, but it's been a busy last few days with WWE because there was Fastlane, there was Raw, and there was SmackDown too, since we met last. And there's been this week-long build-up to last night's NXT. They were counting all the stars. So before we even get deep into anything, kudos go out to Kelsey. From Fastlane on Saturday, Sunday, whatever day it was, you were the only one who believed in your coach and called the Cody and Jay to capture the tag team titles, which they did at Fastlane over the Judgment Day. Tom and I said, no chance, Lance. JD is going to retain, but you said, I know my coach, Cody and Jay, and they did it. Cody's a tag team champion. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, they sure did. I called it from the beginning, and the result was what I called. And I thought the match was great. I mean, there's more that happened, of course, on Monday, but I thought the match went great. I knew that they would be tag team champions. I'm excited to see, what will happen next with everything going on. And I'm sure we'll talk more about Monday Night Raw, but yeah, I definitely thought it was a good match overall.
I'm reviewing our picks from last Tuesday, and there was only one match that all of us got right, and there was one match that all of us got wrong. We all called Cena and LA Knight defeating the Bloodline. That, when you bring Cena out, it was sort of fait accompli that they were going to kind of win that. There wasn't a whole lot for the Bloodline. And the match that we got wrong, all of us, was we all picked the Street Profits to go over LWO. LWO, though, brought out Carlito, a name from the past, who ended up getting the pin. Tom, you were a little down on that booking with the Street Profits. Why?
Yeah, I think, first of all, in fairness to our prediction, they hadn't done the missing partner angle yet. So if we had known that, I think some of us might have had different takes, or all of us might have had different takes on that. I thought that of the only thing that I didn't really like about that show was that decision. And the reason is because I think that they have really invested a lot of time in slowly but surely not only kind of revitalizing the Street Profits, but also people have been clamoring for over a year for them to turn heel. And they've done it in a way that makes sense and is sort of a slow burn where they're, Bobby Lashley is trying to get them to embrace this by any means necessary, do whatever it takes mentality, which they have started to do. And finally, they get to a point where it seems like they're doing it. And then you have them lose clean for the sake of a nostalgia pop. And I thought, it's funny. I really thought.
I think you still could have brought out Carlito and still had Santos take the pin.
Right. So here's my issue. It's not that my issue is not, they brought Carlito back. I'm fine with that. The issue is doing that in a way that hurts the Street Profits' momentum, I think it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I think that a lot of people who watch this SmackDown especially felt like when Roman came back, like 2 months ago, when Roman came back, that we were maybe trending towards Lashley would be his next challenger, maybe Street Profits, sort of as these sort of tweeners taking on whatever configuration of the bloodline was left. And I just think that for whatever reason, I mean, I could speculate why, but I think that the plans maybe have changed, or maybe they're just going to shrug it off as like, it's a minor pay-per-view. We're going to rehabilitate these guys over the next couple of weeks. By the time we get to Survivor Series, all will be well. But it was a weird call from my perspective.
Yeah, that idea of Bobby Lashley being maybe the penultimate contender before his WrestleMania opponent's revealed, or one of two more that Roman's going to have to deal with before he faces his WrestleMania challenge. It's still possible. But yeah, I mean, for the longest time, wrestling fans have either wanted to see what you said, Street Profits turn heel, or see Montez Ford break out into a single star. And neither one of those happened. And now finally we're getting this heel move. I think it'll work. Kelsey, unfortunately, your girl Asuka did not capture the women's title on Fastlane. Neither did Charlotte, as Tom and I accurately predicted. Io managed to retain. WWE right now, I think, is doing an excellent job with their women's division on both shows. We can jump ahead a little bit to what we saw on Raw, but want to get your thoughts on who could be a legitimate contender next for Io. Is it one of them still, or is someone going to rise and be the next one to challenge Io Sky as we get into like late fall before like we get into Royal Rumble season, where a challenger is going to win to challenge Io or Rhea? But what do you think of the women's division overall as a landscape between Fastlane and Raw? Kelsey, that's
sorry about that. So I guess from Fastlane to Raw, the women's division overall, Io Sky, I think she did great. And her winning that match, even though I didn't call her winning that match, she's performing well in the ring, and she's holding that she can have that title. They're not really giving her a huge push, in my opinion, still, but I think that it can happen with the right challenger. Who that challenger could be, that's a great question. Thinking about it, as much as I would love to see, I know she may not come in at this point. I'm excited for Jade Cargill to come into the scene. I don't know if that's the right place where they would insert her. I do see her maybe in Bianca Belair having a match, opposed to Io Sky, but maybe that's something where Jade can come in. Maybe that gives a bigger push. I'm not sure who it might be yet. I just know it's someone that's going to give Io that ultimate push.
Tom, are we going to see some like challenger we hadn't thought of, or something like, Bianca or Becky Lynch at some point? Or are we going to see an inevitable, kind of like Street Profits, we've been talking about this for a long time, an inevitable collapse of Damage Control, and Bayley is going to emerge as the next contender? Because Bayley has stuck with this project longer than I expected.
I think there's a couple of questions or problems happening right now. I think Io Sky has done better than Liv Morgan did after she cashed in, but they have a similar issue where you have somebody cash in to win the title, but they don't make it feel like she's, in the case of Liv Morgan, the issue was, is she really a top in kayfabe? Is she really a top sort of threat in the ring? And I think with Io Sky, the question is a similar one, which is, at any given moment, and we talked about this last week, at any given moment, does she feel like, based on presentation, does she feel like one of the three biggest women's stars on SmackDown? And I would say up to this point, no.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is kind of the challenge that they have to overcome. Now, winning at Fastlane against those two opponents is a good kind of step in that direction. But I think to your point, I think she needs to get in a feud either with one of those top people and then win clean decisively without, shenanigans on the part of Damage Control, or someone new that we haven't seen needs to come on the scene for the purpose of making her seem like a bigger star. And I think that, I don't think they certainly wouldn't do that with Jade, because the plan for Jade when she comes is she's going to be the top of the card immediately, and she's going to win a lot, which she should when she's ready. The person who comes to mind is Kairi Sane, because Kairi Sane has re-signed with WWE and has been sort of held back for a while, waiting in the wings, and I think that could be the next move. The other question is the one that you just raised, Elliot, which is what do they do with Damage Control? Because at this point, is Damage Control doing more harm than good from the standpoint of really elevating Io Sky? I don't know. I'm on the fence about that. I think, I have longed for many years now for Bayley to turn face again. As I've said many, many times, I'll say it again. Bayley as a face at the height of her sort of stardom as a face on the main roster was more, I've never seen anyone who had a more positive effect and stronger connection to children than she did. Mm-hmm. And I just think if I were in WWE, I would have been like, I get that there's always a case to make for a heel turn. But boy, oh boy, that is just a special kind of asset that I think not a lot of people have. And I probably would have been more protective of that than they were. And of course, maybe that's what at the time, whatever. But the point is, you can turn Bayley face and have her, maybe go away for a little while, come back as a face and challenge Io Sky. Or you can keep Damage Control together and try to figure out a way to really make Io the focus by having her go over clean in a feud with a top challenger. But they've got to do one or the other.
I guess this is sort of a rhetorical question because this is professional wrestling, and the answer is, of course she can. But with this extended heel run, would Bayley have that same face reaction this next time around? The answer is, of course, because it's wrestling. If done right, you can always get the crowd back on your side. Look at MJF. But yeah, would it be any less effective this round or have that same?
I don't worry about her ability to be as effective in her performance. What I would worry about is people having short attention or memory spans, especially since, remember, she was already heel when the pandemic started. And the pandemic was, keeping track of time, pandemic time, with all the stuff that happened is really difficult. And so if you're reminding people of something that happened literally 5 years ago, then you're going to have to, and WWE's the best at this, is you'll have to put together video packages and things like that after she re-debuts as a face to sort of refresh people's memories about like how she used to be, who she is, or who she was, and who she is again. So we'll see. I don't know if they'll ever do it, but the interesting thing to me would be all those people who were in love with her when they were little kids are now teenagers, or maybe even like 20 in some cases, or higher teens. And it would be interesting to see if like that is able to maybe attract some lapsed fans who were really into that Bayley character, and then we're kind of like, I'm not super into wrestling anymore. I'm getting older, and that character's not here. I don't know. We'll see.
If anyone remembers Bayley's, so the biggest viral fan of Bayley's was that girl Izzy, who was always at the NXT tapings. Bayley always gave her a hug when she was there. Izzy just had her first professional wrestling match a few weeks ago. She's been training. She's like 18 now, I guess. So that's exemplary of what you were talking about. We'll sort of wrap up Fastlane talk with was the main event. Kelsey, it didn't work out for you and I. Our dreams of a world champion Nakamura did not happen, as Tom correctly predicted. Rollins retains. Rollins walks away. Really good match, lots of spots. Was there anything memorable that you're going to take from that what appears to be the conclusion of that feud? Rollins and Nakamura. What'd you think?
I wasn't able to take away something from that match because was doing my break on Monday. Are you talking about on Monday?
Fastlane.
Right?
Their main event.
Still Fastlane. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I can't name what was my favorite part of that.
Yeah, it was a real solid match. Some good bumps went into the crowd. You know, the online community was quick to point out that Seth took a fall onto a pretty obvious crash pad, but that didn't detract from my enjoyment of it. Tom, is this feud with Nakamura definitely over? And it is. And I guess so we can move to Raw last night. Seth was out there like no big deal. And I guess surprising to me, they seem to have booked Rollins' next opponent for Crown Jewel and Drew McIntyre. That came out of nowhere for me. It seems just like a place filler. Anything more than that to you?
I think the only thing about that is Drew McIntyre is he might be at this moment the most interesting character on Raw for me right now. And, one of the things that happened on Raw that was really interesting was there was a backstage segment, and it was Adam Pearce talking. I can't remember who it was. Adam Pearce talking to somebody, but in the background, you see Drew McIntyre talking to Rhea Ripley.
That's right.
And so I think the reason that I agree, it does kind of come out of nowhere because Drew is, he's around and he's, winning matches, but he's a guy who hasn't really been, since he came back, has been positioned as an upper mid-carder and not a contender for the title yet. And now he's kind of moving up. And so the question is, well, what's that all about? I think that the reason he's the challenger is because they have really done a good job, again, sort of doing a slow burn with a sort of a heel turn. I would argue he's not quite a heel yet. He's just self-interested, someone who's acting in his own self-interest, which again is an interesting little wrinkle that I like about this.
He has declined to come out and help other wrestlers. He just and he sort of explained is like, it's not my business right now. That's not heelish. That's not face-ish.
If it affects me, I'll get involved. So yeah, I'm going to prevent Dom from cashing in. I mean, that's what happened Monday, and then that was before his talk with Rhea. So who knows? Dom wasn't cashing in on his own behalf. Priest was already out there. He had the briefcase, and it was really funny because Drew McIntyre just put his hand up, and Dom like it was his dad. Like, oh, whatever you say, sir. But I think that's the reason why I think he's been put in the main event picture is specifically because of this sort of character shift and the fact that he is uniquely this sort of axis for all these different stories that are kind of happening around him, because he has, like Kevin Owens, he sort of has the Jey Uso beef happening. He's obviously got some issues with the New Day now because of some things that happened over the last few weeks. And he's involved with the main event scene and also now with Judgment Day. So he has got his finger in many, many different pies on Raw. And I think the reason that he is in that main event, at least for the next few weeks, is because he is tied into so many different things that are happening.
Yeah, that's a really good use of McIntyre because he can definitely do it. And I would agree with you. I think that's probably where we're going, and I'll be interested to see how Rollins and McIntyre kind of dance around and towards each other before Crown Jewel. I mentioned it earlier about the women, and I thought one of the highlights of Monday Night Raw was I think WWE was putting squarely in the ring and in the spotlight the people they want eyes on the product as far as the women's division goes for Raw. And they're pretty much loading it up with who we got. We got Rhea Ripley, Nia Jax, Raquel Rodriguez, and now Shayna Baszler. Arguably the four biggest and baddest women on Raw. I like how that story is developing. Kelsey, who do you see of those three as being the biggest threat to Rhea's title?
The biggest threat? I think Shayna will bring something to the table for her. I mean, I think they're all good contenders, but
Shayna kind of cleared house at the end to make it look like almost that she'd be the one.
Yeah, so I mean, I would go with her. I'm going with her.
Tom, these are the four strongest women on the Raw roster. Is this gonna result in a fatal 4-way, or are we gonna see some sort of like round robin tournament to see who faces Rhea? And do any of them have a chance against who's becoming one of the most dominant female wrestlers of her era?
Oh, good question. I think if I'm not mistaken, this could be wrong. I was about to say, the last time they were in Saudi, or maybe last year in Saudi Arabia, did they have a women's elimination chamber match?
Is that Saudi
Arabia?
I remember a women's elimination chamber match. Did that take place at Saudi Arabia? That sounds like that could be right.
The reason I remembered is because of their attire is so different when they're in Saudi Arabia. I feel like that was, I think they did.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I don't know if it's kind of headed in that direction, because I thought that match last time was a big success, and maybe they'll do it again. I think of that group, the way that they have been presenting them, at least, it seems like they are making Nia Jax presented as a sort of monster heel who's going to be a big challenge for Rhea. I would prefer it be Shayna. Shayna, I think, is much more interesting to me, and someone I'd much rather see perform than Nia. But we shall see. Was Zoe Stark even on Raw this week?
Nope.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing, and this is
too bad too.
Tangent.
I like Zoe Stark.
So this is where a lot of people, I think, in the internet wrestling community like to look at Raw or any WWE show other than NXT, and if they see something they don't like, they'll attribute it somehow to Vince McMahon, and in 2023. And if they see something they like, they attribute it to Triple H.
Guilty as charged.
Where you see the biggest difference, or where I think like, oh, something is when different people appear and disappear on these shows. And so, for example, I'm not saying necessarily Zoe Stark is this, because I think Triple H likes Zoe Stark, but like the fact that we've now seen, of course, a full-on DIY reunion and a lot of attention given to them. Obviously, that's kind of a Triple H thing. The fact that you've seen, it looked like Bobby Lashley might have been on a collision course with Roman, and now that they sort of lost some momentum, like that to me is like Vince loves him, and I think loves the Street Profits, and maybe Triple H is not quite in the same place as Vince. And of course, Austin Theory is the other example. So the reason I mention that is because sometimes I get to the end of a Raw and I'm like, wait, was, so-and-so on the show? And there's a million reasons why somebody might not be on one given episode. But I think about that sometimes. It's like there was a conversation, or maybe a shift in approach. Maybe Vince, has been rumored to sort of be out of the picture right now creatively at the moment. Or maybe he just came out of surgery a few weeks ago. And when Raw or SmackDown has that happen, where somebody who had been kind of in the mix for a while suddenly gets de-emphasized or off the show, the first thought I go to is, are they a Vince guy? Are they a Triple H guy? Or is that what's in play? Anyway, like I said, that was a tangent, but just something I think about in watching these shows when people suddenly don't show up.
Yeah, for what it's worth, and if we learned anything from certainly the last several years, but certainly maybe going back since the summer, is that there's a lot of tribalism between the companies, and sports and wrestling journalists are taking full advantage of that, reporting things probably not in the most, using the most integrity in the world. But there was a report this week that the feeling is that TKO Endeavor company that has merged UFC and WWE has basically, their words, they have basically knighted Triple H to be sort of head of creative. He's 99.9% in charge of the shows. They'll always listen to Vince and sometimes, make some adjustments based on him. But I think the feeling going forward was this is now fully Triple H, per Endeavor. And I think if you were to ask the common fan, that's probably a good thing at the end of the day, giving full kudos to Vince for everything he created. But if Triple H is, running the show creatively, I think that's ultimately a good thing in 2023. Just the last couple of things I'll say about Raw before we move to NXT last night was next week on Raw, there'll be am I correct that there's going to be a rematch for the tag team titles? Sammy and Kevin against the new champs of Cody and Jay. was so focused on NXT. I was sort of trying to remember what happened at the end of Raw last night, Monday night. Did they meet and did Cody and Jay? Yeah, Cody and Jay defeated Sammy and Kevin. Is that correct?
Correct. And they sort of buried the hatchet, I guess. Like Sammy was fully willing to do it, but he had to kind of convince KO.
At the end, though, Kevin hugged Jay. They put their hands up. So that beef appears to be squashed, but they are wrestling next week or no? They're not wrestling. They're not
wrestling each other.
They're not having another tag team match next week, are they?
There's going to be a rematch for the tag team titles.
That was a
Judgment Day.
Right, that's what it was. Yeah. Thank you. Getting a little confused. There'll be a rematch. Okay, so just to put a pin on Raw, it's a rematch of the tag team titles. Drew is talking to the Judgment Day. Kevin appears to be in line with Jay, but we never really know. Let's make a prediction right now. Kelsey, I want to hear from you. We're not going to meet again until next Tuesday. So in the main event next week, rematch for the tag team titles, Judgment Day against the newly crowned champions of Coach Cody and Jey Uso. Who you got?
I'm sticking with Coach Cody and Jey Uso.
They're going to somehow retain.
Yep, I am sticking with them. And Kevin on Jay's side was interesting to see. I do see maybe a heel turn from Sami Zayn somewhere in there, maybe something like that.
If there are anything that is a constant in life, it's death, taxes, and Kevin and Sami constantly turning on each other and facing each other at big events. I'm kind of with you, although I actually think Judgment Day is going to recapture the tag titles next week. But yeah, I think there'll be shenanigans in play, and I wouldn't rule out Kevin being not 100% on board with this. I can also see Drew causing some problems somehow. Tom, your prediction on next week's main event, tag team titles, does a Judgment Day recapture? What do you think, Tom?
Yes.
Do you think Kelsey said is a yes? I'm a yes. I'm a no. I think Judgment Day captures them.
So I think that where they are now, I don't think anybody's going to turn before Survivor Series, because I think everything is building towards either a 4-on-4 match at Survivor Series or potentially a 5-on-5 match. The way you get to a 5-on-5 match is that you add to the mix, the 3 existing male members of Judgment Day. JD McDonough would be the 4th, and then your 5th becomes Drew McIntyre, potentially. He hates Jay. He will have just faced Seth. And potentially that conversation last week could be Rhea saying next week in the main event is going to be your chance to get revenge on Jey Uso. So our interests are aligned. If you will, help us in that main event. And then maybe he becomes fully heel. He attacks Jay somehow. That's a title switch. I will say, I think it makes more sense not to switch the titles right now. That's just me. I think that you are, as we've talked about, you have built up, it's this weird thing where the tag titles are on a parallel track from a tag division that has really started to be built up again. And that's weird to me. I think where you want to get eventually is the tag titles being passed around this revitalized tag division. And then, Cody obviously has something really important to do. Jay has something really important to do separately. Same thing with Sami and Kevin Owens. They have stuff to do individually, but you're not there yet. Right now, I would probably keep the titles on them. So I would say they probably retain.
All right. Can't wait to be the outlier next Tuesday that I can boast. All right. So that was Fastlane. Good show. Tom, I think that night you called it a really good episode of SmackDown. Yeah.
That's about the level it was. It was fine. It was fine.
Raw was good. Now next week, this Friday, SmackDown's being advertised as a season premiere. Roman's coming back. So that's going to start, kind of unofficially start up everything. Raw,
you can start paying attention again.
Raw the following Monday will be another season premiere. So, depends what that means. It means big things will be happening, but who knows? All right. All week they were talking about NXT. They were building it up all week because, as we know, due to commitments with baseball and TBS, Dynamite was also on last night. So they're going head to head. 2 questions. I'm going to let you both speak on it, but question is, how much of the build up to NXT and the front loading of stars from the main roster and legends was directly because of they'd be going with their competitor, going up against their competitor AEW? And that's one question. Second question, with all that superstar talent, they did not crack 1 million. Not that 1 million is just some benchmark number, but they didn't even crack 1 million viewers. So, Kelsey, I'm going to let you go first. Take either of those questions, whichever one you want to answer, or give your thoughts on both.
Maybe because it just was not out of nowhere, but it wasn't expected that, legends would show up. And there was teasers, of course, Cena, I think people know it's coming, but also not only that, people may have also been watching AEW as well. So
yeah, at the end of the day, 1.5 million people watched professional wrestling last night between NXT and Dynamite. So that's a good thing overall. They got, over 900,000. NXT was in their kind of traditional time slot. It was Dynamite that wasn't. But yeah, do you think that was WWE and this huge company who really shouldn't really have to worry too much about AEW, who is, still a fledgling company? Do you think this was to directly go against them, or to somehow put all these legends up to taunt Tony Khan, to say, look what we can do, look what you're trying to compete with? Do you think that was on the mind of WWE when they were programming? Because I guarantee you it's on Tony Khan's mind every week what he can do to try to peel viewers away from WWE. I just don't know if WWE is doing the same with him.
Yeah, it's hard to say what they're doing, because since this merger too, I've heard, I don't know, like how much of this, rumors are rumors, right? So that Monday Night Raw may be trying to switch to Sunday. I think that there's some things happening, some things in the wrestling world that's happening. I know that competition is great in general, like having different platforms of wrestling is only going to build wrestling. But the fact that it's falling on the same night, that's more of a head-to-head competition, not something that kind of builds each other. I do think there's a plan for WWE. I don't know what it is yet, but I think there's a lot of movement going on, and there will be a change of when they do have Monday Night Raw, potentially.
Tom, they brought out The Undertaker, which was awesome. It's always awesome when Undertaker comes out. They brought out Cena, they had Rhodes, they had Asuka, they had LA Knight. It's in its regular time slot. They promoted it all week. Didn't get 1 million. Does it matter? Yes or no? And secondly, you and I have sort of had this somewhat spirited debate about it, on our message board, about whether each company, how much they care about the other. But was WWE just knowing that, hey, we're going to have Dynamite come visit the Tuesday night Wars, let's show them what we can really do?
I would say, 1 million, it would have been nice to hit that number. And the other thing is, overnights usually are going to increase a little bit in a couple of days. So they may still get to 1 million. They were close. I don't think that's that relevant. I think what's relevant is that they were, beat AEW by 50%, which is kind of the key. I would say, to answer your original question, I would say it's probably 70%, and it's hard to answer this as a percentage because it's intertwined. So they definitely wanted to beat AEW, but the stacking of NXT was not purely because they were going head to head. There was definitely extra stuff. I don't think you would have seen The Undertaker. I don't think you would have seen Cena. Probably not LA Knight. But this is part of a larger strategy that's been rolled out over the last several months. And the primary drivers of this are, one, renegotiations for television rights for what the package that's currently on USA, which is Raw and NXT. And secondly, an idea or a philosophy, I should say, that Endeavor TKO has, which is we want NXT to be like a stronger, like a third brand, a true third brand. And so in the midst of this, there is this, because of baseball, there is this head to head. And I think it's less, we gotta, beat AEW because it's AEW. It's more, oh gosh, we need to maintain like a ratings advantage over whatever we're facing that night. And this, because of what it is going to be more of a challenge to us than what it usually is. So it's like the whole argument that WWE is putting forward in their negotiations is something like AEW live. The one thing that is sort of the most desirable asset now in television rights is live events, but particularly live sports, or in this case, live sports entertainment, because that seems to be the most sort of durable type of product to put on TV that is less susceptible to ratings erosion. Okay. So AEW just got $1 billion deal. Yep. And so WWE's argument is going to be, they just got $1 billion for like this level of audience. We're here. So therefore our compensation should be, commensurate with that advantage that we have. That argument gets severely undermined if the one time they go head to head with that company that just got $1 billion, they get beat. So, so it was, I think, was more about that and less about what it was during the Wednesday Night Wars when they were really like, hey, we're going to try to beat AEW, and they failed. So I think it's a different kind of calculus now, but I don't think it would have been as stacked if they hadn't been going head to head. But it's more about, like, I'll just say this in closing. If there had been something like, I don't want to say an NFL football game, but let's say for whatever random reason, like a decently high profile college football game that night, I think they also would have stacked NXT more because of that. I think that this was just even more incentive just because of the relationship between the deal AEW just got and the negotiations that WWE is involved in right now.
Okay, I want to ask this to both of you. Kelsey, I'm going to ask you this first. I'm glad you're here because you are someone who, grew up watching the Attitude Era, then took a really long break from professional wrestling and was drawn back into it, 2 years ago or at least a year ago, somewhere in between that, when you went to WrestleMania with your brothers and saw Stone Cold, and it brought back all these memories. What is it like for you to have an appearance by The Undertaker, someone who you probably saw at a young age? Then you kind of had an entire life that didn't involve pro wrestling. You're now fully back into it. You are a professional wrestler. I think it hits all fans differently when we still see The Undertaker come out. What does it do for you when The Undertaker makes an appearance in 2023?
I thought it was great. I did not expect The Undertaker to make an appearance. He was at WrestleMania 38, which was awesome. So he was there both days. He made a little appearance there, but I didn't think that he would show up at NXT. I was very surprised in a good way. And of course, whenever you see anybody from that era, it just brings back that nostalgia, and we can talk about that era all the time, but it makes me feel, okay, there's maybe some type of rise. Can we bring a little bit of that era in right now? With him coming back, John Cena's making a little bit of this, well, not a little bit, he's very involved now.
He's there until the strike's over. Yeah.
So it was great to see him. It was great. I felt like comfortable watching wrestling.
Yeah, I got you. And Tom, for you, who has been a lifelong wrestling fan, but almost primarily, if not exclusively, you have always been a WWE guy. When you see The Undertaker come out in 2023, and I like the American Badass look. I thought that was cool. I think Taker's more comfortable. I think that's closer to his actual personality. But just as a lifelong WWE fan, when Taker comes out like that, what does it spark in you, if anything?
I feel like that there's just I didn't even watch wrestling until I was in college. And when I was in college, I preferred WCW. So both of the assertions you just made are inaccurate.
I thought you were a WWE guy. What?
I mean, I am now. I am now. But anyway, look, here's the point.
If you're a wrestling fan, you know The Undertaker. There's no way he is the most recognizable faces and most popular superstars ever.
I don't need to see him in the ring anymore. I mean, I know it wasn't a match, but look, the guy, he was fantastic for years and years. He is I might be in the minority on this, but I think once guys get to a certain age and they've had hip replacements and knee replacements and stuff like that, it's like we have the old footage. We can go watch that and enjoy it. I mean, it was cool that he was there. I don't think, he needed to necessarily get physical with Braun Breaker and kind of dominate him.
Right.
I don't know.
I think you could walk away saying what Undertaker did last night was kind of give the rub to Braun Breaker and to Carmelo Hayes, two guys who
definitely to Carmelo.
Definitely to Carmelo. I mean, he closed the show raising his hand. They were going to a ring slapping hands. WWE has an opportunity now that they really can't waste with Carmelo Hayes. Now, if you've given him the Undertaker rub, Kelsey, you've been trained in wrestling. Am I correct that you got to bring Carmelo straight to the main roster and push him so you don't waste this rub you got from one of your biggest superstars of all time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to bring him in and just being a wrestler. I feel like it would be hard to not wrestle. Like I can relate to wanting to be back in that ring because every moment I'm not in the ring, I want to be in it. So I can definitely relate to that. And so I didn't really answer the question, but yeah, I think that it's a good thing. And yeah, I'd just be curious to see. I mean, but Tom is right. When you're older and we can just watch your matches again, we really can, and you don't have to. You have to put your body on the line, or you don't have to come out. You might not perform as good as you do in the past, like John Cena had mentioned after his Fastlane match. He did not think his performance was as good. He's been away for a while. Now he's coming back. So they're rusty. They will be rusty, and but it's very hard to stay away from the ring. It's very hard.
Yeah, I bet even days when Undertaker's waking up not feeling well, he wishes, he thinks back to his days. Tom, what's the quintessential Undertaker match for you? Is there one?
Oh, wow.
For me, it's
there's so many.
Yeah, for me, it's the Triple H with Shawn Michaels WrestleMania in the cage.
I mean, that was a very sort of nostalgia heavy match. I think the best match I ever saw him in was probably the first Shawn Michaels match at WrestleMania. That to me, that's in my. I'm just trying to think how I would rank him. I mean, I would say that is maybe for me as high as number 2 on my all-time favorite WrestleMania matches. I mean, I'd have to look at the whole list, but I mean that was a fantastic match. And it was still at a time when someone kicking out of the tombstone was like shocking.
Right.
That obviously wore off a little bit because they went to that well a few times over the latter part of the streak. But I mean, probably that. I would say probably that.
Yeah, Kelsey, what's your? I know you're a Stone Cold gal, so I'll ask you, what is your quintessential Stone Cold Steve Austin match? Is there one that just sticks out? Like if you were going to a VCR right now to go watch a Stone Cold match, what are you watching? I'll tell you, for me, I'm watching there's a ton of these online, a supercut compilation of all the Stone Cold stunners. Like I'd watch some compilation of the greatest Stone Cold stunners. I love all his matches, but for me, it's the interactions with The Rock and where he has all the. I would just watch stunners and Shawn Michaels super kicks on a 50 on a loop. But for you, give me a Stone Cold memory that we can we can wrap the show up on?
So the matches that stick out with me, you hit it, The Rock, because those are two people that I watched growing up. But I'd have to say, when I went to WrestleMania 38, him and Kevin Owens, I'd have to say that's one of my best, because that's I was there. Looking back, I also wanted to mention, in that you brought up Stone Cold Steve Austin, there's kind of a Stone Cold nostalgic moment when Joe Coffey and Big Ridge came out with the beer, dumped it on him, threw him through the table, and so that also kind of brought back that nostalgic moment.
Sure.
So I just had to mention that, since we're on the road of legends.
Beer and Stone Cold will always be synonymous with each other.
It'll always, yes.
That's great. I mean, Tom, we're sitting here on October the 11th. The actor strike has not yet been resolved. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you today, where are we? If you had to guess today, will we have Rock and Roman at WrestleMania?
I wouldn't bet on it, but I do think that every day we get closer to the end of the year, and the strike has not been resolved, it becomes more likely.
Is the strike? I mean, is that's the one and only? Because I mean, Cena has said, he was asked this question at the Fastlane press conference, I guess. If the strike gets settled, are you summoned back to Hollywood? And Cena said, yeah, that's just how it is. Yeah. The Rock is a bigger star than Cena. He, I think maybe more than I'm guessing, but I think more than Cena, Rock is dictating what he does. And I think, he probably does have some commitments that he's already committed to or is halfway through when the strike started. But I feel like Brock, better than Cena, could say, okay, if the strike ends in November, I can plan my first half of 2024 to include this, where Cena's, I think, still beholden to other things. Am I misguessing that, or what?
It's a complicated question, because the one thing about The Rock is that he has his own production company, which is also very successful. And I think that even if The Rock, for example, were not, let's say for the sake of argument, that The Rock were not directly involved in some, big movie production, because I think that's kind of Cena's thing, is like, look, I have commitments that predate the strike, that if the strike is resolved, immediately would kick in again, and I have to go do these because there are other people who are counting on me to be there. There's a whole production company and team and whatever. With The Rock, the reason why it's more complicated is because he may have sort of business duties, whereas if Cena, hypothetically, were not tied up with him actually acting in, season 2 of Peacemaker or whatever, he could theoretically be like, okay, for whatever reason, I may decide I'm just going to do this for the next 3 months and then wrap this up and then go back to Hollywood. The Rock might not be in that position, even if he doesn't have a role lined up, which I'm sure he does. But even if he didn't, because remember, the thing that really, I think, was the biggest issue outside of the wrestling realm and getting The Rock to work last year's WrestleMania was the relaunch of the XFL, because he was so deeply involved in that, and it was going to coincide in the spring with like the build to and then following WrestleMania. That was the thing that was really, like, he was at games, like going to different games, like on the sidelines and doing events to promote the league, and that was taking up all of his time. And so I think, bottom line is, here's what I feel confident in saying this. Don't know it for a fact, but I feel confident. He has had a conversation with WWE about, like, here's the point of no return, meaning if the strike has not been resolved by date X, I will work WrestleMania with Roman. So I think that conversation has been happening. The question is, what does that date look like?
Right.
Practically, it would be the end of the year, or at least Royal Rumble, because you would want him for the Rumble to Mania build.
Mm-hmm.
So that probably means the strike, as I think we talked about this before, the strike would have to go on for at least another probably 3 months. I just don't I think they're going to resolve it before then, especially because the writers have already kind of, it's not one-to-one, but they have sort of set a template for how to resolve this with the studios. Not all the demands are the same, but there is at least now sort of a blueprint for the direction to go in. And now that that mold has kind of been set, I think that it's unrealistic to think that they won't figure this out over that period of time.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
I would say probably not.
Well, we reached 50 minutes, and I didn't bring up CM Punk. And I'm not going to bring up CM Punk because now all the reports.
I think you just did.
Well, I just did. Now all the reports are saying that he approached WWE and he was rejected. Somewhere between it's fait accompli that Punk is coming back at Survivor Series in Chicago to Punk went to WWE and said, "Here, I'm happy to work for you," and I was rejected. Somewhere in between the truth lies. So, we will have to wait till November, but I'm a little less bullish on Punk returning than I was. I still would love to see it, but that's mostly just because I'm here for all the chaos. Before we get out, TG, any final wrestling thoughts that I didn't bring up that you want to discuss?
One question,
please.
Who does Roman face at? There's only 2 options. Who does Roman face at Crown Jewel? It's Crown Jewel, correct?
Correct.
The Saudi show on November 4th, whatever it's called.
Non-canon Saudi show.
Non-canon. Who does he face? LA Knight or John Cena? Let's assume the strike doesn't get resolved in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think to really put over the Saudi crowd, it's going to be John Cena. That's my guess. I think LA Knight is a great choice, but I think LA Knight could have his own story post WrestleMania next year that could involve Roman, could involve Cody. Who knows? But LA Knight, they don't need to. I wouldn't want to see him lose in yet, because I don't think LA Knight should be in position yet where he's losing a world title match. I think when he has it, he should win it. But I don't know when that's going to be. So I'd say Cena. Kelsey, you got a preference on who you'd rather see a Crown Jewel face Roman Reigns?
I mean, yes. If Cena's still around, I would go Cena. I would.
Yeah, that's his high profile. I mean, whatever deal they have with the Saudis, it's to make it as big as a show as you can possibly make. And I think Cena's the one. Is Cena your choice too as well, Tom?
I think that would be my prediction for the reasons you just said. The Saudi shows have been, especially the early ones, were heavily built around nostalgia I don't want to just say nostalgia, but more established acts who were popular, 5, 10, 15 years ago. And so, especially since he's about to leave one way or another, having him face Roman one-on-one. I think the wrinkle would be, and we'll know after Friday, the wrinkle would be, it's possible that Roman won't have a singles match for whatever reason. Like, he'll be on the card for sure, but they could do something where it's like, him and Solo against Cena and LA Knight or something. But if he defends his title at Crown Jewel, it's Cena unless somehow that strike gets resolved in the next few days. But
agreed. Kelsey, any final wrestling takes or thoughts that I didn't bring up tonight? We didn't bring up tonight that you want to throw out there? Anything you saw from watching the shows or?
Yeah, I mean, we really covered the thing that stood out most to me, and that was actually the NXT last night, the bringing people back and just all the wrestlers that were on the show last night. Nothing else in particular. I did like, so I'm going back to Coach Cody, the Code D. I don't know if we saw that
yep.
as a way to modify the 1D name. So, mix of the 1D and the Cody Cutter. So they called it the Code D. I thought that was kind of cool, but
I dig it. Code D. It was
Code
awesome.
D. Yeah.
Well, before we get out of here, Kelsey, tell us where everyone can watch you other than this show, and tell us about your wrestling.
Yeah, so I don't want to release it quite yet, but it looks like I'll be having a match in the beginning of December. So once I get more details on that, I'll be able to release the information of it. But it's looking pretty good for December 2nd. So there is that. And then also you can find me breaking sports cards on with Graybo's Sports Cards. So I break wrestling cards on Monday nights at 8 p.m. And yeah, that's pretty much
every week when I watch the show on Monday, and I watch you on my phone, and I have Raw usually somewhere else in the house. You do a great job interacting with the fans. The fan base on that Monday show is definitely growing. I mean, you're getting
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we need you to bring some of that audience over to Wrestling Chat with Friends to help pump our numbers too. So
I know
you do a great job promoting Wrestling Chat with Friends on Whatnot on your Graybo show. Continue to do so, please. Tom, no one wants to see any of your thoughts and opinions, nor do you want them to see it. Am I right? Yeah.
Correct. It's a mutually beneficial lack of interest.
Yes. I along with Cheats and our favorite heel and heels, Megan, we run the Wrestling Chat with Friends X page, formerly known as Twitter, at WCWF Pod on X. I'm also at EAJRVA, giving wrestling thoughts, giving thoughts on the Atlanta Braves, who got walloped tonight, giving my thoughts on the band Fish, who I'd like to go see tour, and anything else. We will hopefully be back here in a day or two to talk AEW, because I thought Dynamite was excellent last night, and they're steaming toward full gear. So we will be back here next Tuesday. Catch Kelsey on Monday on Whatnot. Never look for Tom because he doesn't want you. And we'll be here Tuesday, Wrestling Chat with Friends, back again next week. And we are done. Peace, guys. Ring that bell.